More tiny power coming soon.
Now it's time for Goose to have a look at how Rockstar have changed the gaming landscape.
If someone mentions Rockstar Games, the first thing you'll probably think about is Grand Theft Auto. But looking at the bigger picture, it becomes clear that Rockstar have really made a name for themselves, creating a whole range of gritty and mature titles that let us explore the world like never before. As their games usually took place in cities like LA and New York, you wouldn't have guessed, but Rockstar actually started out as a small Scottish developer by the name of DMA Designs. Their first hit was the PC puzzler Lemmings. It was their next two games, though, that would become the building blocks for the juggernaut we know today. Nintendo first signed them to produce the sci-fi shooter Body Harvest for the N64. But Nintendo wasn't a fan of the game's violence, asking DMA to tone it down and add more puzzles. DMA refused and walked away from the deal. As it happened, their next game was even more mature. Sony capitalized on Nintendo's decision and signed the original Grand Theft Auto for the PlayStation.
Grand Theft Auto.
The freedom of being able to run riot through a city, stealing and shooting anything you wanted, proved to be a strong action game template, but the 2D overhead view felt a bit dated and many gamers chose to look down on it. Then Rockstar added Body Harvest's 3D perspective to the mix with GTA 3, and the result was unlike anything we'd ever seen in a game. It was released near the end of 2001 with minimal marketing fanfare, but luckily word of mouth spread like wildfire and made it one of the year's best-selling games. And while the missions in GTA 3 were great, it was the world that they created that was the real star. I got so sidetracked with this game that it took me a couple of weeks to even get off the first island, and I still remember every inch of the place. You could always find something interesting to do on every corner of that city. Plus there were those ridiculous cheat codes. Lost your car? No worries. This little beauty always came in handy whenever someone brought his fist to a tank fight. For the next locale, Rockstar took us on a neon-lit, synth-pop-inspired trip back to the 80s with Vice City. Gangster films were always a big inspiration for the series, and Vice City upped the star factor with Ray Liotta voicing Tommy Vercetti, an entrepreneurial businessman with big plans for this new town. But as you'd expect from a GTA game, it doesn't all go smoothly.
Look, Sonny, we were set up. The deal was an ambush.
The hugely popular series was then taken to new heights with San Andreas. It added new characters, vehicles, included a neat Gang Wars minigame, and for the first time, it let us escape the big smoke and head for the hills or the desert.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got everything you want. How do we dominate? We are the people that can find.
When the current consoles arrived, Rockstar used them to power its most ambitious and explosive title yet. Riveting stuff, that. But it wasn't long until Rockstar learnt how to harness the power of next-gen consoles properly. GTA 4's New York-inspired city had a level of detail and cinematic style that we'd never seen before. I remember taking cabs everywhere in this game just so I could moodily stare out the window at passers-by in the rain. Thankfully, the clunky controls of the earlier GTAs had also got an overhaul, resulting in some top-notch combat and some realistic driving for once. Over the years, Rockstar has been cast as gaming's bad boy. Their titles regularly stir up storms of controversy, the most persistent being GTA's strong sexual elements. Combining these adulterous acts with the already over-the-top violence and freedom led many games in the series to make headlines for all the wrong reasons.
We got you from every angle.
More protests surrounded Rockstar's high school adventure, Bully.
You must be the Hopkins boy.
Where'd you come from?
The game was incorrectly vilified for being a bully simulator, and while it was possible to attack innocent kids, it wasn't encouraged.
Now let me see. You've done a lot of naughty things, haven't you?
While a lot of the controversy surrounding these games was blown way out of proportion, Rockstar's next title, Manhunt, was an entirely different beast. It put you in the role of a convicted crim murdering his way to victory. There was a strong focus on the torture-style kills, and it had a really disturbing snuff flick feel. As a result, Manhunt was banned in Australia and its sequel never did arrive on our shores. As well as creating their own blockbusters internally, Rockstar had a knack for spotting potential hits that others had discarded. When Capcom halted development of Red Dead Revolver, Rockstar saw the potential in its slow-mo shooting mechanic, so they revised it and added their own gritty touches. Rockstar's signature open-world gameplay was later injected into the sequel, Red Dead Redemption. It was a stunning love letter to spaghetti westerns of old. Some serious artistry was used to turn the dusty plains into truly memorable locations and vistas. The next troubled child Rockstar adopted was L.A. Noire.
We'll handle the 211.
After several years in development, Sony walked away from the project, but despite its problems, Rockstar saw potential in the ambitious graphical and storytelling devices. 7 years later, we got L.A. Noire, a game that steered away from the explosive action, instead rewarding the patient, methodical gamer.
You did well in there.
Not all of Rockstar's children have been troubled, however. Max Payne, for instance, was a hit right from day one. It fused the slow-mo bullet ballet of films like The Matrix with the murdered cop out for revenge storyline from The Punisher. And while it ticked every cliche in the book, the expertly executed action set up the series for an even more interesting sequel before Rockstar finally brought the franchise in-house for the third game.
Vlad!
Max, 911. Bad guys with big guns.
Rockstar Games have always led the charge as a mature developer, and while they have faced their fair share of controversy, most of it has now shifted into the background, allowing them to do what they do best, make great games. So the next big question, is Max Payne 3 one of them?